Okay, so I did a basic vlog yesterday. I think it was yesterday. No, it was Monday on the IEP process. And I discussed aspects of what happens during the actual annual review and the meeting when you are at the school writing the IEP. But I had some really great questions regarding the physical IEP itself. Once it's written, once it's approved, and you receive the IEP in the mail. I had some great questions be asked. So I wanted to kind of address what the IEP looks like and what you should expect, what it should say, what to make sure you are asking for them to write on the IEP. So bear with me. I'm going to do some pausing and some shuffling of papers because I want to show some examples. Keep in mind also as I show you things that IEPs from different districts can look differently, just like from state to state, they're going to look differently, but generally speaking, the same types of information should be on this individual education plan. One of the first things that, and probably the most important because this has to be done before anything can be written on the IEP, is a specific classification. Again, I'm in New York State, so our classifications may appear different than what some of the other states are. But that is the defining factor of these IEPs and what goes on them and why the IEP even exists. For instance, I have 3 children with IEPs. 2 have a classification of autism. That's clear, that's easy. I know that sometimes there's discussion about labeling your child, if you will. In this instance, you kind of need that label. It's important to have a specific classification so that you can give the child the services that they're going to need to be successful. In New York State, the autism classification allows you specific services pertaining to like speech services, for instance, that you don't necessarily get with some of the other classifications. So a proper classification is necessary. Sometimes they're other health impairment, they're speech and language impaired, visually impaired, emotional disturbance. There are different classifications that should be apparent on the front page of your IEP. There should be a specific classification for your child. Typically, that's not something that's disagreed upon. It's pretty clear usually what the classification should be, but it is a very important piece of your IEP. Another piece to the IEP that is very important and can be all telling sometimes with some students is whether or not there needs to be a behavior plan in place. There is a specific spot on the IEP that will say, yes, the behavior plan needs to be done, and it has or it has not. And the reason this is important is because if you've got a service provider or a teacher that is seeing this IEP and they see that, then it's brought to their attention that there are behavior needs and that there's an additional document to this IEP that they're going to need in order to determine how to handle the specific behaviors that will arise. A behavior plan should be well written. It should be clear and concise. It should tell you exactly, down to the smallest detail, what the behavior looks like. And in turn, it will also tell you exactly down to the basic details how to intervene or what to replace that behavior with. Not all children will require a functional behavior assessment, but those that do and have that behavior plan in place, it is imperative that that's on the IEP. Most of the teachers will see these children day to day and will understand what the behavior plan is because they'll have seen it numerous times. But we all know that there's times when there is a substitute teacher or a new therapist. It is very, very important that that behavior plan is on the IEP so that they know that it exists. Another aspect to the IEP that's not your basic stuff, which is like your goals and all of that kind of thing, is assistive technology. If you have a child who needs an assistive technology device, and this can be lots of different things, that needs to be on the IEP as well. That can include the major voice output devices like a Dynavox, iPad, some schools use, but it also can be computer usage, PECs or picture cues. I know that I say PECs. Most of us that live with autism understand what that means, but if you don't, they're picture cues or words with pictures, depending on the level of your child. These are the kinds of things that need to be documented on the IEP as well. Another thing about the IEP that is important that you know is your related services. And these can be lots and lots of things: speech, OT, PT, music therapy, counseling, sign language, assistive technology services. There's a lot of different therapies and services. So I'm not going to list them all because there are so many that I clearly couldn't. I'd forget things, or I would not even know things, because some people have specific services that are not widely used, and that's okay. But it is important to understand that these will be listed on the IEP. And the question I had was, what's it going to look like? How is that going to be listed? It's going to be listed with how many times a week, and then the duration of each thing, and a location will be listed, and whether it's group, large group, small group, or individual types of services. It will not say on Mondays, student A will receive speech therapy for 30 minutes. The reason that is because we all know how life is. And if you are providing services to lots of different children with special needs, we all know that there may be behavior issues, there may be kids that aren't there, there's state testing, whatever. It's next to impossible to pinpoint every day this is going to happen. Yes, most therapists and teachers and service providers do have a schedule, and they do follow it. But your IEP is not going to say every Monday. What it will say, for instance, is if you have speech therapy 3 times a week for 30 minutes. So it'll read speech therapy 3 times 30 minutes. It will include whether that's group or individual. I'm going to assume this is pretty normal across the board, but in New York State, a small group can consist of a small group of 1. So if you have small group and you typically see 2 students and one of the students isn't there, individual therapy or a small group of 1 constitutes a small group. However, if you have 1 times 30 of speech individual, it must be done individual. You do not have the flexibility of adding another student into that. The other thing that will be included besides that is the location. If it's done in the classroom, if it's done in a therapy room, if it's done in the community, those things will be listed. I'm going to attempt to, I'm going to attempt to show you what I'm talking about, but my camera doesn't allow me to flip from me to an outside paper, so bear with me as I try to make sure what I want to show you is in the screen. You can see here where it says individual, 1 time a week, how much, where it's at, in the therapy room, in the school program, but it lists the specific therapy. You'll have to bear with me. I know it's backwards, but that's the way the camera is going to do it. So, but that's the way that it's going to look. And it will show you the frequency, the duration, the location, the dates, when it'll start, when this specific service will start. It'll have a start date as well. These are important to know because these have to happen. So when you get your IEP, you really need to go over it, because even if everything is done to agreement, there can be human error in terms of just inputting information. So really make sure you go over these carefully so that everything's listed the way that it should be. One other thing I wanted to discuss about the about the IEP, besides the basics, I did not discuss the goals. I'll go into that just briefly. There will be goals for each service, including the special education service, and the reason those are there are because that's how you measure whether or not it's been a success. And that also helps you determine what you can do and if the service should continue. Another part of the IEP is going to be the test accommodations. These can be lots of different things. I'm going to read you real quickly what the test accommodations are on the IEP that I'm looking at, and then I'm going to go into just a few little snippets of that, and then you can determine from there what's necessary. Administer the test in sections over several sessions, not to exceed 20 minutes. Large print, directions read, simplify language and directions. Test passages, questions, items, and multiple choice responses read to the student. Tests administered in a separate location. Extended time. This one says extended time by 50%. Use of aids, assistive technology devices, the Dynavox, and it's very specific. There are conditions listed. You can use a scribe. You can use calculators. You can have the test read to you, as long as it's not testing, you're reading. You can have, some kids have OT issues and Scantron issues. You can write your test answers in the test booklet and have someone else transfer your answers to the Scantron. These are all really important aspects of what your child may or may not need. It's also very, very important to understand that for different things like the use of a scribe, it's important to know that what your child says is exactly what's going to be written. Even though we can a lot of times decipher what someone's saying, and we know that if little Johnny says, I nanny, we all know that he may mean I want a banana, but that's not what the scribe is going to write. The scribe is going to write exactly what he says. It's still an accommodation that many, many children need. I'm not trying to persuade you not to use it. I just want people to be aware that that's exactly what that means. There are many different test accommodations that might be needed, and it's important to discuss with the teachers and the test givers and the therapists so that you know your child's limitations. These tests a lot of times are stressful, and you want them to be able to be successful. These accommodations are not going to make it easy. They are just tools that can be used in order to increase the likelihood of success for your child. One last thing, and I know this is getting long, and I appreciate you guys listening and sharing and your questions, and I hope that you find these vlogs useful. Otherwise, I don't need to do them. Is special transportation, and this can mean a lot of different things as well. I like to be specific. I have a child who has motion sickness, so he cannot physically ride a large bus or a regular sized bus. So his IEP is going to state that he needs to have special transportation, and he has to be on a small bus. We also add to that, if there's 3 or more students, there must be a monitor, even on the small bus. There are very explicit instructions. If you have a child who is past a certain weight and age, then on the bus they don't have to have seatbelts, but you might have a runner or a child who is unsafe and might need to still be in a booster and a 5-point harness. Those are things that you need to put under special transportation. It's okay to ask for those if that's what's necessary for your child. You want your child to be transported safely for his or her sake, and for the bus driver, the monitor, the other kids on the bus. Safety is very, very important. So there you have it. I hope I answered the questions that I got. If you have more questions on the physical look of the IEP and what it includes, please let me know. Or if you have other specific questions about anything with the special education process or living with disabilities or whatever it is, just let me know, and I'll tailor future vlogs about that. I apologize that my last vlog I went into more of the meeting and less of the actual documentation, so I appreciate you bringing it to my attention that I needed to address the physical look of the IEP.